Lesson 7: Coaching Basic Media, Face-to-Face and Asynchronous Video Communication.
Welcome to the lecture Coaching Through Modern Media. I'm Harald Geisler. I'm Professor for Further Education at Helmut Schmidt University in Hamburg, Germany. My favorite subject in research and teaching is coaching. I'm doing this reflecting my many years of experience as coaching practitioner. On this basis, I developed and established in 2006 an internet platform called virtualcoaching.net. In these days, I was a pretty lonely pioneer in this new field. But now things are changing. More and more coaches are becoming open to use the modern communication technologies for their coaching services. And more entrepreneurs invest their money to develop new internet platforms to be used for distant coaching services. So I think now it's time to have a lecture about coaching through modern media, or shortly e-coaching, to give a broad overview and some in-depth insights into this interesting new field of practice. If you have a look into the slides you can see in the background, you will realize that our lecture is structured into some different parts. The first is the introduction. The second is referring to the coaching basic media. This lesson today is the third one in this second part. Its issue is face-to-face and video communication, synchronous and asynchronous video communication. We are building on the insights we have learned in the last session. There we have learned a lot about the linguistic speech. That's the first component. Here, in this lesson, we will have a look onto the other four components, onto the paralinguistic behavior, the non-verbal body expressions, the personal appearance of coach and client, and the coaching context. We will present these different components and discussing the different advantages and disadvantages. Today's lesson is structured in 8 parts. Let us start with a statement by Professor David Clutterbuck about the characteristic features of face-to-face communication in coaching.
Well, if we start with the fact that face-to-face communications is extremely rich, there's a lot going on in that conversation, and it's very easy to be distracted by all sorts of things that are going on in the conversation around you. And so if we are concentrating on the other person, if we are getting caught up in their emotions, there's so much happening that very often we can miss some of the most important things. Now, on the one hand, all of that information is very helpful in helping us to become more intuitive. So we sense things which we can't necessarily articulate, but we are able to. I talk about having the conversation, 3 conversations. There's the conversation in the mind of the coach, the conversation in the mind of the coachee, and then the spoken conversation, which is the obvious one. And a lot of the communications, perhaps, I don't know what percentage, but a high percentage of the communication is actually happening in those other 2, not the spoken conversation. And one of the questions we frequently ask coaches to think about is my intuition turned on? Because if it's not, then you're going to be missing a lot of the content there. And so when you're doing face-to-face conversation, what tends to happen is that people get drawn in to doing too much. Because and one of the things that we train coaches to do is we call it the rule of 3. You listen to somebody, you think of a question, you think, I really should ask that question. But we train them to resist that instinct and to, when there's a pause, to allow the other person to speak, to continue to speak. So you count to 5, and then you just don't ask the question. Then the next time the person pauses and the question is still there, you do the same thing. And it's only on the 3rd time that question occurs do you actually ask it. But mostly by then, the person has come up with the same question or a better question, or indeed that you realize you've improved that question because it's percolated.
What we have just heard focuses on 2 insights. On the one hand, face-to-face communication is extremely rich communication. And on the other hand, this richness causes the potential danger to distract attention from essential things. We share these insights, and we're going to give reasons during this lesson. The first reason has already been elaborated in the 3rd lesson. Let us remember. Face-to-face coaching features all 5 media components, that is, linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, nonverbal body expressions, personal appearance of coaching client, and the coaching context. And face-to-face coaching utilizes all 3 sensory channels: seeing, hearing, and feeling. In detail, we discovered that in face-to-face coaching, both linguistic speech and paralinguistic behavior are acoustically created without electronic devices and are transmitted synchronously without the use of such devices. Further, we could state that the perceivable nonverbal body expressions, the personal appearance of client and coach, and the coaching context are visually created without the use of electronic devices, and that they are transmitted synchronously also without such devices. And the same is true for the physical tangibility of the coach and the client's personal appearance and the coaching context. In the last lesson, we established that the media component linguistic speech is extraordinarily diverse and potent. This is true with regard to both the management of the coaching issues and the management of the relationship between coach, client, and coaching issues. The current slide shows the diversity of this media component with the width of the rectangle and the potency concerning relationship and issue management with the width of the rectangle. In today's lesson, we will take a closer look at the 4 media components of face-to-face coaching. That is, we will have a closer look at paralinguistic behavior, at nonverbal body expressions, at personal appearance of coach and client, and at the coaching context. All of these media components are symbolized by rectangles. Hereby, it is possible to compare them with linguistic speech and to notice the importance of linguistic speech immediately. If we look at the 5 just mentioned media components, it becomes apparent with regard to face-to-face coaching that the first 3, linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, and nonverbal body expressions, are closely connected. In comparison, personal appearance of coaching client and coaching context seem to be further apart. Regarding this connection of the first 3 media components, linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, and nonverbal body expressions, we have to consider the work of Albert Mehrabian, which is cited frequently but often misunderstood. Human communication is often said to be distinguished by the meaning of a face-to-face transmitted message being determined by 7% linguistic speech, 38% paralinguistic features of spoken language, and 55% facial expressions and nonverbal body expressions. This is definitely wrong, which is even explicitly stated by Albert Mehrabian. What is the background of this misunderstanding? Mehrabian did not study regular face-to-face communication, but inconsistent communication. Inconsistent communication is characterized by the contradiction between the content of linguistic speech and the paralinguistic messages and facial expressions of the speaker. He examined the contradiction that the media component linguistic speech was used to transmit an "I like" message, while the media components of paralinguistic behavior and nonverbal body expressions were used to transmit a "maybe" message or an "I dislike" message. His research question was, which of these messages does the listener trust more? The message transmitted by linguistic speech or the message transmitted using paralinguistic behavior and nonverbal body expressions? The result of his study was the average listener of a mixed message only trusts 7% of the message transmitted by linguistic speech, while he trusts 38 and 55% of the message transmitted by paralinguistic behavior and body expressions. In his book, Silent Messages, Implicit Communication of Emotions and Attitudes, Mehrabian emphasizing those connections and distances himself of the misinterpretations. On that note, he wrote on his website under the headline Inconsistent Communications, the Relative Importance of Verbal and Nonverbal Messages. My findings in this topic have received considerable attention in the literature and in the popular media. Silent Messages contains detailed discussions of my findings on inconsistent messages of feelings and attitudes. There is an equation that total liking is a sum of 7% verbal liking plus 38% vocal liking plus 55% facial liking. Please note that this and the other equations regarding relative importance of verbal and nonverbal messages are derived from experiments dealing with the communication of feelings and attitudes. It is attitudes regarding I like or I dislike. Unless a communicator is talking about their feelings or attitudes, these equations are not applicable. In his 1981 published book, Silent Messages, Implicit Communication of Emotions and Attitudes, Mehrabian emphasizes those connections and distances himself of the misinterpretations. With regard to page 286 to 305 in his books, he states on his website concerning his research on inconsistent communication. My findings on this topic have received considerable attention in the literature and in the popular media. Silent Messages contains a detailed discussion of my findings on inconsistent messages of feelings and attitudes and the relative importance of words versus nonverbal cues on page 75 to 80. The basic equation is 100% total liking is of the sum of 7% verbal liking plus 38% vocal liking plus 55% facial liking. And he continues writing, please note that this and other equations regarding a relative importance of verbal and nonverbal messages are derived from experiments dealing with communications of feelings and attitudes. It is I like and I dislike. Unless a communicator is talking about their feelings and attitudes, these equations are not applicable. Apparently, Mehrabian's research results are not valid for normal face-to-face communication and therefore are not valid for face-to-face coaching communication either. On the contrary, research conducted on face-to-face coaching communication suggests that linguistic speech is by far the most important media component. Professor Clutterbeck, whom we heard at the beginning of this lesson, seems to share this point of view. For this reason, the entire last lesson was taking care of this very important media component, linguistic speech. Time now to have a look at the other four media components, which are the paralinguistic behavior, the non-verbal body expressions, the personal appearance of coach and client, and the coaching context. We should not forget to take into consideration how these overall 5 media components are combined in face-to-face coaching.
In face-to-face communication, the media component linguistic speech is involved as spoken words, which means in combination with the media component paralinguistic behavior. The media component paralinguistic behavior consists of 8 elements. Sounds like moaning, groaning or laughing. Speed, how fast or slow somebody is speaking. Volume, how loudly or quietly somebody is speaking. Tone and tension, the voice can be soft or rough, tense or relaxed. Articulation, pronunciation, sounds can be articulated clearly or unclearly. Emphasis, specific word can be emphasized. Dynamic, you can talk vividly or phlegmatically. Breaks, hesitation, the speaker can hesitate at some point or make a small or large pause. We have another look at the lessons video.
Hi Chris, how are you?
Not very good, I'm afraid. I've got a problem, a real problem, and I'm getting really stressed about it.
With regards to these 8 seconds we just watched, there's one thing noticeable. The clients respond when asked how she's doing. Oh, not very good, I'm afraid. The O is a sound which resembles moaning. Furthermore, the sentence ends with which seems like moaning as well. In addition, the intonation of the word problem and the special intonation of real in real problem is noteworthy. Finally, the relatively high dynamism of the client has to be mentioned. Let us compare those 8 seconds with another part of the coaching. After the goal of the coaching has been clarified and the realization condition have been reflected, the coach asks the client to reflect on her opinion for action in a brainstorming.
It's done.
Well, I suppose I could not do the report. That would be nice.
Okay.
I don't think that would go down very well, though.
Right. What else?
Well, I suppose I could ask my boss to put back the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't think that would look very good.
Okay, so put back the deadline. I'm just going to note them down as we go through. Okay.
Okay. What else could I do? Okay, I've got the meetings on Wednesday. I could either cancel one, or I could see if I could get somebody to cover for me. In fact, my colleague might be able to cover for me on the one in the office.
With regards to this part, there are some things noteworthy. The client makes longer pauses. The speed of speech varies. She maintains a relatively high dynamism. Comparing the diversity of elements of the media component paralinguistic behavior with the diversity of elements of the media component linguistic speech, it is obvious that the former is far less diverse. Nevertheless, in comparison with the other media components, which we will introduce soon, it is more diverse. The current slide shows paralinguistic behavior with the aid of a rectangle with several less wide than the rectangle with symbolic linguistic speech. However, it is much wider than those representing the other 3 media components. The second dimension of the rectangle informs about the capacity regarding issue and relation management. With regards to the video we just watched, it is safe to say that paralinguistic communication behavior is noticeably more concerned with issue management. It is possible to symbolize the comparison of linguistic speech and paralinguistic behavior in the following manner. Face-to-face communication has to serve two purposes in coaching: the management of the coaching issue and the management of the relation between coach, client and coaching issue. Linguistic speech can serve those two purposes as well, because speech act consists of two parts: a propositional part, which is used for coaching issue management, and a elocutionary part, which is used for relation management. Thereby, linguistic speech is a series of cognitive and metacognitive reflection and structuring. The paralinguistic behavior, on the contrast, is a series of emotions and impulses. It overlays the linguistic speech in a manner that it refers considerably more the coaching issue management than the relation management of the relation between coach, client and coaching issues. However, it is impossible to determine to what extent certain paralinguistic behavior refers to the coaching issue management and to what extent it refers to the relation management. It is safe to say that emotions which are conveyed by paralinguistic behavior refer primarily to coaching issues and secondarily to relation issue. In the way emotions can interfere with each other, the client might feel grief thinking of a specific issue and at the same time feel shame to express the feeling in presence of the coach. With regards to paralinguistic behavior, we can conclude 3 advantages and 2 disadvantages. The first advantage is that paralinguistic behavior enriches linguistic speech and encourages an emotionally vivid dialogue, which facilitates an idle, sparking dialogue. The second advantage is that in face-to-face coaching, coach and client can ask immediately to clarify any uncertainties and give immediately feedback. The corresponding disadvantage is that the spoken is volatile. As a consequence, it is difficult to reflect on spoken words and sentences, because you are depending on your own memory. With increasing complexity and stress, the memory becomes unreliable. The third advantage is that the client's paralinguistic behavior is offering the qualified coach deep insights in the emotional aspects of the client's problem. Thereby, it is favorable that the paralinguistic behavior is far less controlled by the client than the nonverbal body expression. The second disadvantage is that the analysis of paralinguistic behavior proves to be difficult. Unlike the linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior is far less precise. And what is even more important, the client's emotion in the conversation with the coach about the issue, while producing specific paralinguistic behavior are here and now emotions, meaning emotions the client has in the coaching situation. Therefore, we can't safely say that the emotions which show in the client's paralinguistic behavior are identical to those the client experienced while in the situation the client is now taking about. They are rather emotions the client currently experiences while taking about an issue from the past. And what is even more problematic, even the statement can't be made with certainty. The client's emotion while remembering an issue mixed with the emotion during the coaching with the client experience caused by the contact with the coach. That is why the client might feel grief thinking of a specific issue and at the same time feel shame to express this feeling and presence of the coach. Let us have a look at the third media component, the nonverbal body expressions. In contrast to the paralinguistic behavior, which is only acoustically perceivable, the nonverbal body expressions are only visually perceivable. In detail, they compose of 5 elements: facial expressions including the eye compressions, body movements like quick nervous foot or finger movements, posture, body positioning in space, meaning the position of coach or client in the room the coaching takes place, and mutual eye contact. For this purpose, we have another look at the video. Particularly, this is one part the coach asked the client to brainstorm her opinions. For now, we will focus on the facial expression. One part is especially remarkable.
Well, I suppose I could ask my boss to put back the deadline. And again, I don't think that would look very good.
Okay, so put back the deadline. I'm just going to note them down as we go through. Okay.
Okay. What else could I do? Okay, I've got the meetings on Wednesday. I could either cancel one, or I could see if I could get somebody to cover for me. In fact, my colleague might be able to cover for me on the one in the afternoon in
Right.
Tiverton. Yeah,
Okay.
that might be possible.
So you could cancel a meeting or get your colleague to cover.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else could you do?
Well, I suppose I could get somebody else to write the report for me.
Yep.
But by the time I explained it to the person and shown them what to do, I probably could have done it myself in the first place. So I'm not sure that would really be much use to me.
There's one very strong facial expression which can only be seen for the fraction of a second. This facial expression follows her saying, "I could ask my boss to put back the deadline." She commends this option immediately, and again I think that's not so very good. The expression we observe happens together with the word "again", and it signals an evolution which follows immediately. I think that's not so very good. Now let us have a look at body movements and postures.
Okay. What else could I do? Okay, I've got the meetings on Wednesday. I could either cancel one.
The posture indicates how deep in thought the client is. And finally, the movement of arm, hand and fingers, which indicate that she came up with a good idea.
Okay, I've got the meetings on Wednesday. I could either cancel one, or I could see if I could get somebody to cover for me. In fact,
If we compare the nonverbal body expressions with the paralinguistic behavior, it becomes apparent that facial expressions, postures, body positioning in space, meaning the position of the coach or client in the room the coaching takes place, and the unilateral eye contact serve a similar purpose on the paralinguistic behavior, whereas the mutual eye contact has a different function. The four elements of facial expression, body movements, postures, and the body positions in space, meaning the position of coach and client in the room the coaching takes place, which compose the nonverbal body expressions, serve a similar function as the paralinguistic behavior, which is to enrich linguistic speech, with information about emotions. These emotions refer mostly to coaching issue rather than the management of the relation between coach and client. The mutual eye contact, however, is crucial for the relation management. We are talking about mutual eye contact if the following two activities entangle. The coach observes the client, how he or she observes him responding her, and at the same time the client observes the coach, how he or she observes him or her. This mutual eye contact is crucial for face-to-face communication. Its distinctive feature is that the mutual entanglement of few correspondence with a strong mutual bonding and social control. Everybody experienced this who saw his or her dialogue partner looking out of the window. Therefore, the mutual eye contact leads to a stronger social bonding and control than linguistic speech. We are speaking of unilateral eye contact if the client observes something while the coach observes the client. Most of the time, whatever the client is observing is not what he or she is reflecting about. Therefore, the client emotions, which are expressed in the eyes, are not caused by the observation of the something, but they are caused by what he or she is thinking about. We call those emotions which express themselves in the eyes eye expressions. These eye expressions are part of the facial expressions. Similar to the paralinguistic behavior, together with other elements of this media component, they mirror the client's coaching issue and the emotions that are connected on the relation with the coach. With regard to the nonverbal body expressions, we can conclude that they have 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages. The first advantage is that they accentuate the spoken word and in this way enrich it emotionally, thus bring to life the linguistic speech by the connection of linguistic speech and paralinguistic behavior. The corresponding disadvantages is the extremely high volatility of the nonverbal body expression and the hence difficulty to grasp them for systematic observation and reflection. The second advantage is that the client's nonverbal body expressions provide deep insights into the emotional aspects of the client's problem. However, the coach is not the only one observing and interpreting nonverbal body expressions. The client observes intensively the coach's nonverbal body expressions. On this basis, the client reacts to tiny signals of the coach. For the client, this is an important source of immediate feedback, hoping to get information how the coach evaluates the client's coaching behavior. Therefore, transfer and projection are much easier to be made up in visual data than on acoustic data. This means for coaching, the client observes the coach's nonverbal body expressions closely with unconsciously simulated with her or his transfer and projection. In specific case, this could lead a positive or negative emotion. Anyway, due to this interference, the client is unable to see the coach the way he or she really is. The third advantage on nonverbal body expressions is mutual eye contact, which is a strong means to control the relation between client and coach. However, these advantages come with the disadvantages as well. The mutual eye contact distracts the client from the coaching issue and could make the clients unnecessarily dependent on the coach. David Clutter had this in mind when he started in the video we saw early that the diversity of media in face-to-face coaching communication come with the danger of being distracted from the really important thing. Concluding, we can say nonverbal body expressions are composed of 5 elements, a little less than paralinguistic behavior. One of those 5 elements of nonverbal body expression, mutual eye contact, is very important for relation management between coach, client and issue in face-to-face coaching. The other 4 elements of nonverbal body expressions are mainly a part of the issue management. Like the paralinguistic behavior, they are valuable emotional carries. In coaching, however, it is possible to know to what extent the emotion expressed by the nonverbal body expressions refers to the client's issue of the relation of coach and client. Therefore, the nonverbal body expression serves both relation management and issue management. In comparison to the paralinguistic behavior, the nonverbal body expressions are less multi-faced.
Now we get to the 4th media component, the personal appearance of the coach and client. With the exception of tactile shake hands experiences, the personal appearance is based exclusively on visual perception. This media component consists of 8 elements. However, of those only 2 can be manipulated at short notice, namely outfit, for example clothes and maybe jewelry and hairstyle, as well as the shake hand experience in the greeting and farewell. Non-changeable, or at least not at short notice changeable, are physical condition, which shows whether someone is fit or exhausted, depressed or full of zest for action, sex, age, lineaments, ethnical feature like skin color, and height and girth. If you compare this media component with the other one, 2 things strike. The first is that it is not very extensive because only 2 of its elements are formal and the other 6 are given. And the second is that the personal appearance of the coach and client are less useful for the relation management than for the coaching issue management. Therefore, to sum up, we can ascertain the fact that the personal appearance of the coach and the client is mutually visible is connected with an advantage and with disadvantage. The advantage is that the personal appearance of the client, especially all signs of his physical constitution, can give important insights into the client's problems. However, it is necessary to note that the diagnostic value of the personal appearance is lower than those of the nonverbal body expressions and paralinguistic behavior. However, the fact that the personal appearance of the coach and of the client is mutually visible is also connected with disadvantage. The client might pay a lot of attention to the coach's personal appearance, attention which the client should direct towards the coaching issue. Finally, the fifth media component is the coaching context. This is perceived visually, tactilely, or acoustically. In detail, the coaching context refers to the client's office, or the coach's office, or the client's workplace. It might as well be outdoors, for example the coach's garden, or a walk in nature. The fact that the coaching context is mutually visible for the coach and client is connected with two advantages and two disadvantages. The first advantage is that the coach can equip his office ideally for the coaching, or that he can connect it with a walk in nature to create an especially favorable environment for the client. The disadvantage, however, is that coach and client must be the same location, which costs time and money. Therefore, the sessions must be planned in advance, and big distances might render the coaching impossible. Moreover, relatively short meetings are economically problematic. The second advantage is that the client's office offers a rich insight into his or her work environment, which could be valuable for the coaching issue. The corresponding disadvantage is that a client directs a lot of attention towards the coach's office, especially in the first session. This attention should be directed at the coaching issue instead. If we finally have a look on the width of the shape of the fifth media component, we must ascertain that it corresponds with the width of the shape used for the personal appearance of the coach and client. In contrast, however, the coaching context serves exclusively the relation management between coach and client.
Let us come to the last section of this lesson. We have asked a couple of coaching experts how they estimate the attention profile of experienced coaches and average clients. For the adjustment of the attention, we offered 9 different options: attention to one's own linguistic speech, attention to the partner's linguistic speech, attention to one's own paralinguistic behavior, attention to the partner's paralinguistic behavior, attention to one's own nonverbal body expression, attention to the partner's nonverbal body expression, attention to one's own personal appearance, attention to the partner's personal experience, and attention to the coaching context. Furthermore, it had to be distinguished between the first session and the subsequent sessions. The result of the investigation can be summarized in 5 clusters. The first result cluster refers to the linguistic speech. Coaches pay the largest amount of their attention to the linguistic speech of the client. Although the difference is relatively small, this is more valid for the subsequent session than for the first session. In comparison, the amount of attention the coach pays to linguistic speech is remarkably smaller. If we have a look at the 5 media components: linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, the nonverbal body expression, the personal experience, and the coaching context, it is safe to say that the coach pays a disproportional amount of attention to linguistic speech. The client's attention profile is very similar to the coach. Clients direct almost exactly the same amount of attention to the coach's linguistic speech as the coaches do the client's linguistic speech. However, as opposed to the attention profile of the coaches, the clients pay more attention to their own linguistic speech. The second result cluster refers to paralinguistic behavior. It becomes apparent that this media component is clearly less important for coach and client than the linguistic speech, since they direct less than half of their attention to paralinguistic behavior. Just as with the linguistic speech, coaches as well as client concentrate their attention more on the other paralinguistic behavior than on their own paralinguistic behavior. The third result cluster refers to the nonverbal body expressions. The level of attention to the nonverbal body expressions is slightly higher with coaches and clients than the amount of attention towards paralinguistic behavior. And the attention is directly and remarkably more focused on the communication partners than on themselves. The fourth result cluster refers to the personal appearance. The level of attention of the personal appearance corresponds all in all with that of the paralinguistic behavior. The following is especially remarkable, in contrast to three media components: linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, and nonverbal body expression. The attention on the personal appearance is higher in the first session than in the subsequent session. This can be interpreted as a hint towards the confirmation of the thesis. In contrast to linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, and nonverbal body expression, the coach's and the client personal appearance seem to be less important for the work on the client's problem. This conspicuity applies above all of the clients. For them, the experience with the coach's personal appearance in the first meeting is of particular importance. The fifth result cluster refers to the coaching context. For both coaches and clients, the context is way more important in the first session than in the subsequent sessions. If one combines the attention to self with the attention to the conversation partner, the following becomes apparent. The linguistic speech is for coach and client by far the most important media component. Linguistic speech and paralinguistic behavior together make up 50 to 60% of the coach's and the client's attention. Adding nonverbal body expression to linguistic speech and paralinguistic behavior, and those three components account for 80% of the client's and the coach's attention. The importance of these three media components is diminished by coach and clients for the first session. Since in the first session the personal appearance and the coaching context are relatively important. The fact that these both media components are less important for coach and client in the subsequent session impressively reveals that they are of less importance of the problem-solving process.
To sum up, we can identify the following advantages and disadvantages of face-to-face coaching. The first advantage is that the connection of linguistic speech and paralinguistic features favors creative communication. In case of obscurities, it is possible to ask in order to clarify. Immediate feedback is possible. This advantage comes with a disadvantage. The spoken word is ephemeral. The only documentation is provided by the own memory, which becomes unreliable with increasing complexity and stress. The second advantage is that by optimizing the office equipment or choosing the ideal location, the coach can create the ideal framework for the coaching. However, to achieve this, coach or client have to get to the coaching location, which costs time and money. Therefore, sessions have to be planned in advance, and covering large distances is problematic. The economic aspect is an issue. Being at the same place at the same time offers another advantage. The client's office offers insight into his or her work environment, which corresponds, of course, with the disadvantage. The client directs a lot of attention towards the coach's office, especially in the first session. This attention should be directed at the coaching issue. Another advantage is that through linguistic speech enriched by paralinguistic behavior and nonverbal body expressions, deep insights into the emotional aspects of the client's issue are possible. That is partially true for a client's personal appearance as well. This comes with three disadvantages though. The first of those is that the coach's nonverbal body expressions and the coach's personal appearance might stimulate the client to create problematic projections and transfers. Second of those disadvantages is that there is uncertainty whether the emotions transmitted by paralinguistic behavior and nonverbal body expressions refer to a client's issue or to the coaching situation. And the third of those disadvantages is that the client might pay a lot of attention to the coach's personal appearance and the coach's nonverbal body expressions, attention which the client should direct towards the coaching issue. The final advantage is that by mutual eye contact, the relation and the contact with the client can be controlled effectively, which of course corresponds with the disadvantage that mutual eye contact might distract the client from the coaching issues and make the client unnecessarily dependent. Let us have a look at video coaching now. It occurs in two manifestations, as synchronous video coaching and as asynchronous video coaching, which we can call coaching through video mailing. These both manifestations have some commonalities and some differences. First, we have a closer look at the commonalities. These commonalities become apparent if we compare synchronous and asynchronous video coaching to face-to-face coaching. It has to be stressed that synchronous and asynchronous video coaching is quite similar to face-to-face coaching because both share the media components of the linguistic speech and paralinguistic behavior. Now towards the differences. A first, indeed not so big difference, is that in synchronous and asynchronous video coaching, the personal appearance of the conversation partners is somewhat limited in its influence. The reason is the setting of the camera determines what the conversation partners can or cannot see. That is, for example, the dirty shoes, or the socks which do not fit the shoe's color. Therefore, in the present slide, the personal appearance is narrow. The just mentioned limitation of the perception by the setting of the camera also concerns the coaching context. Since the client cannot look around the coach's office freely, the client can only see what is shown by the coach's camera. To this limitation of perception, there is a second one added. In video coaching, coach and client do not share a common coaching context as they do in face-to-face coaching. In video coaching, the coach's office is the coaching context of the coach, and the client's office is the coaching context of the client. And one thing that has to be added with reference to the coaching context, in face-to-face coaching, the coaching context can be experienced visually and tactilely. In video coaching, however, the coaching context can only be visually experienced. This is a huge difference. Another big difference is that in video coaching, there is no mutual eye contact, since the essential part of mutual eye contact in face-to-face coaching is that the eye of one communication partner observes the eye of the other. In video coaching, however, the video camera determines what is observable. This entails that the communication partners see each other, but they do not look each other mutually in the eyes. This again has a big impact on the control process in video coaching. After talking about the shared characteristics of synchronous and asynchronous video coaching, we will pay attention to the differences now. There are two important differences. The first difference is that coaching processes can easily be carried out exclusively as synchronous video coaching. This is not valid for asynchronous video coaching, however, since this format is generally only used as a substitute for coaching sessions which are carried out as face-to-face coaching or as synchronous video communication. The second important difference between synchronous and asynchronous video coaching is the different time structure. Synchronous video coaching is characterized by the following elements. Coach and client communicate in larger time intervals of about 2 to 3 weeks. The video communication sessions last for 60 to 90 minutes, while face-to-face sessions can be remarkably longer. The production of the communication data happens at the same time with its reception. The once produced communication data cannot be deleted or hidden from the recipient. This is especially true for the non-verbal body expressions. The recipient of the video doesn't have the option to experience the heard or seen material in an identical manner again. If the recipient did not hear the speaker correctly, he or she has to ask the speaker to repeat what he or she said. This creates mental and temporal pressure for speaker and recipient in video communication. The asynchronous video communication, meaning coaching through video mailing, is characterized by the following elements. The production and reception of the video do not happen simultaneously. The transmission and the production of the video do not happen simultaneously either. The reply to a video can be done without time pressure. Between reception of a video and its reply, there are usually hours or even days in between. To ensure that the recipient is not confused by the video's contents have to be carefully chosen. The video created by the speaker is easily deleted during production. The video production can be stretched to hours or maybe days. The video's recipient can listen and/or watch it repeatedly. For the advantages and disadvantages, this has the following consequences. The first advantage, in contrast to face-to-face coaching, coach and client do not have to get to the location, which saves time and money. Therefore, sessions can be planned on short notice. They could be relatively short as well, and longer distances are not an issue. This advantage, created by modern communication technology, however, corresponds with 3 disadvantages. The first of these is that options of locations which would be beneficial to the coaching process, like office equipment, coaching in garden or nature, cannot be used. The second disadvantage, which is an essential prerequisite to synchronous video coaching, is that the client has to be willing and able to face the technical challenges of synchronous video coaching. This is accompanied by a third disadvantage. Since the video camera determines what can be seen, mutual eye contact is only partially possible, which means the social piloting has largely to be done without. The second important advantage of synchronous video coaching is, like in face-to-face coaching, the connection of linguistic speech and paralinguistic features favors creative communication. In case of obscurities, it is possible to ask in order to clarify, and it is possible to give immediate feedback. As we already know from face-to-face coaching, this corresponds with a specific disadvantage. The spoken word is volatile. The only documentation is provided by the own memory, which becomes unreliable with increasing complexity and stress. The third big advantage of synchronous video coaching, although not quite as distinctive as in face-to-face coaching, is in synchronous video coaching, it is still possible to gain deep insights into the emotional aspects of the client's issues. This is especially true for the connection of linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, and non-verbal body expressions. The client's personal appearance is of far less importance. And again, this advantage comes with 3 corresponding disadvantages, which applies for face-to-face coaching too. The first one, the visual data of both the coach's non-verbal body expressions and his/her personal appearance can stimulate the client to biographic transfers, prejudice, or projections. A second connected disadvantage, it is unclear whether the emotions conveyed by paralinguistic behavior and non-verbal body expressions refer to the client's issues or to the coaching situation. And the final disadvantage, the client might pay a lot of attention to the coach's personal appearance and the coach's non-verbal body expressions, attention which the client should direct towards the coaching issue. Let us create the same table for the advantages and disadvantages of asynchronous video coaching, that is, coaching through video mailing. The first advantage, like with synchronous video coaching, is the coaching process is locally independent. Time and financial constraints caused by traveling are eliminated. The second advantage, in contrast to synchronous video coaching, is that the coaching is flexible time-wise. It is not bound by fixed session lengths or time zones. Those two advantages, linked with the use of modern communication technology, correspond with 2 disadvantages. The first disadvantage, like with synchronous video coaching, the client has to be willing and able to face the technical challenges of asynchronous video coaching. The second disadvantage, mutual eye contact, is impossible, which means the social piloting has to be done without. The second big advantage of asynchronous video coaching is that the videos are documents. Their production is easily controlled and reflected on, because they can be designed flexibly time-wise. The same is true for their reception. The message can be watched multiple times and paused at any time. Both combined, the flexibility time-wise for production and for reception, offer a great opportunity for increased reflection. This advantage again corresponds with 4 disadvantages. The first one, there is no natural, spontaneous flow of communication. The second disadvantage, due to the possibilities for control during the production of the videos, it is easy to hide emotional reactions. And of course, the third disadvantage, immediate feedback is impossible. And the fourth corresponding disadvantage, in case of obscurities, you have to wait for a clarification, which creates possibilities for misunderstandings. Finally, the last big advantage of asynchronous video coaching is that in asynchronous video coaching, it is possible to gain deep insights into the emotional aspects of the client's issue too. This is especially true for the connection of linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, and nonverbal body expressions. Limiting to this might be if the client produces the video not spontaneously, but very controlled. This advantage comes with 3 disadvantages. The first disadvantage, like with face-to-face coaching and with synchronous video coaching, the visual data of non-verbal body expressions, and even more so the coach's personal appearance, might stimulate the client to problematic prejudices, biographic transfer, or projections. The second disadvantage, again, like with face-to-face coaching and with synchronous video coaching, it is unclear whether the emotions conveyed by paralinguistic behavior and nonverbal body expressions refer to the client's issues or to the coaching situation. And the final disadvantage, the client might pay a lot of attention to the coach's personal appearance and the coach's nonverbal body expressions, attention which the client should direct towards the coaching issue. This is true for face-to-face coaching and synchronous video coaching as well, of course.
Now we are coming to the end of this lesson, the 7th lesson. What are the most important insights I wanted to deliver to you? I think most important is a message that face-to-face coaching or video coaching is not the best option. There are not only advantages, there are also some disadvantages. Well, let's think of the three most important advantages. The first is that face-to-face communication and video communication is a multimedia, multi-channel communication that is offering a lot of options, for instance, for immediate feedback or immediate further inquiry. And it's offering good occasions of the coaching location, for instance, the office outfit, or to use the garden or a nature walk for coaching purposes. The second advantage is that these multimedia, multi-channel communication offers deep insights, especially into the emotional aspects of the client's problem. And the third advantage is referring to the fact that face-to-face communication is based on mutual eye contact. And that offers the advantage that you can control the interaction and process very precisely. You see, that are really important advantages. But on the other side, there are also some disadvantages. And I think the most important disadvantage is that face-to-face communication is based on the spoken word. The spoken word is ephemeral, absolutely ephemeral. And that causes some problems, because if there are some insights you have worked out in the coaching process, they are documented only in your memory. And especially if you are under stress or the problem is very complex, your memory is not very reliable. That's the first and most important disadvantage. The second is, if you choose for face-to-face coaching, then you must go to the coaching location, and that takes time and perhaps money. And the third disadvantage is referring to visual cues, especially the coach's personal appearance. These cues can bear the risk that the client focuses not on the issues that are really important for his coaching process.